something I want to talk about today that I hold with a lot of care. My choice to go no contact with my family. It's not something I would ever suggest lightly or prescribe to anyone else. Family relationships are complicated and layered and deeply personal. And this was not a decision I made quickly, emotionally, or impulsively. It came after, I want to say, years of working on myself, and even then it surprised me. So let's back up a few years. I was about to get married when something shifted. I had already done a lot of healing around the idea that my mom was emotionally immature, and I had made peace with that framing. It felt manageable, but right before my wedding, a quieter, more unsettling question surfaced. What if it wasn't just immaturity? What if the narcissist in my family wasn't my dad, but my mom? And that thought felt almost forbidden. So instead of reacting to it, I decided to test it. And this was out on a walk with my husband. So I said it out loud, and he kind of opened his eyes in shock as well, as I saw his worldview tilt. But I decided to test it gently and honestly. I looked back over my life through that lens and asked, what would it mean if it were true? And things started clicking into place. The stories I had been told about my dad no longer outweighed the memories I actually had of him. Words are cheap, is what my husband always tells me. Words are cheap, you know? Actions mean more. My dad, the memories I had of him, he always showed up. He played. He's the reason why I'm into video games. But he nurtured all the things I wanted to do in my life. He encouraged me to go out and play in the world and go on hikes, and we went backpacking, and we did all sorts of things together. He built me a tree house in his backyard. I played countless hours the time that I had with him. He constantly showed up and tried, and he loved me in ways that felt steady and real. Words just couldn't erase that lived experience anymore. So my fiance at the time and I decided to run a quiet experiment. So we sat together and we made predictions, not out of spite, but of curiosity. If certain people in my life were truly operating from narcissistic patterns, how would they behave around my wedding, which was coming up in a couple weeks? A moment that wasn't about them, but about what should be about us. So we talked, and then we watched. And what happened wasn't dramatic in the way movies are dramatic. It was subtle. It was predictable, though, almost textbook. And strangely, it made us laugh. So on our wedding night, we weren't angry. We were sitting together, exhausted and happy. And then we were laughing about how accurately the patterns had revealed themselves. There was clarity instead of chaos, and that clarity was oddly freeing. So at that point, my plan wasn't to disappear. I thought I could emotionally disengage while still keeping them physically in my life. I believed I was unbothered and detached and above it all, to be honest. My husband supported me completely. So before the wedding, on my wedding day, actually, I wrote my dad a letter. I told him I missed him. I told him I had the wrong parent at my wedding. And I promised myself that after the honeymoon, I would find him again. And I did. For a while, though, I thought I had it all figured out, that I was no longer vulnerable to the dynamics I grew up with. But then something happened that I hadn't predicted. It felt calculated. It felt deeply painful. And it showed me that there were long games being played. Games I couldn't see, I couldn't anticipate, and I didn't want to keep reacting to. It wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about my own safety. And that's when I chose no contact. It wasn't out of anger, and it wasn't to punish anyone, but I just didn't want people in my life who still had the power to hurt me. I think they sensed my withdrawal before I could formally step away. My sister lashed out publicly on social media. She was always the guard dog of the relationship. And my mom, my mom just faded in the background. She went silent. And that silence felt familiar, like an old strategy meant to pull me back into line. But I didn't take the bait. I didn't go back. What followed was something I didn't expect as much as I probably should have. Peace. Not the kind that comes from everything being resolved, but the kind that comes from not being pulled into games you never agreed to play. And now, fast forward to now, I am a mother. And when I imagine those same dynamics around my daughter, the confusion, the manipulation, the subtle erosion of self, the choice becomes even clearer. I don't feel bitterness. I don't feel triumph. I feel settled. There are still awkward moments with extended family. There are still complicated dynamics. That's always going to be a part of reality. But I wake up without dread. I live without constant vigilance, and I trust myself in a way I never could before. So, no contact wasn't about cutting people out. It was about choosing a life where my energy goes toward building something healthy instead of surviving something harmful. And for me, that choice has brought more peace than I thought possible.